You found your way to Whispers of Crimes, a quiet corner where the shadows of the past are gently told. Here, we speak of real crimes and mysteries, not to shock or scare, but to wonder, to reflect, and maybe to help you fall asleep. So close your eyes, let your thoughts slow down, and come with me into tonight's case. On a warm July night in 1997, two sisters disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only questions and a trail of confusion that would haunt an entire nation. A body was found, but the other? Gone, vanished. 7 men were accused of a crime so brutal, so unimaginable, that it gripped the country's heart. One of them, a young man with connections to one of the most influential families in the Philippines. But was the right man convicted? Or were they all just pawns in a game much darker than anyone could have imagined? A trial full of contradictions, a web of lies and truths tangled beyond recognition, and a mystery that would stretch across continents. Who really killed the Chiong sisters? And where did Jacqueline disappear to? The truth is out there, but it might be more dangerous than anyone could have ever anticipated. What if the wrong man has been behind bars all along? Chapter 1. The Night They Vanished. Cebu City, a bustling urban hub in the Philippines known for its vibrant culture, rich history, and beaches, was about to become the center of a tragedy that would ripple throughout the nation. It was July 16, 1997, a seemingly ordinary evening. Marijoy Chiong, 23, and her younger sister Jacqueline, 21, left their home to enjoy an evening out. Marijoy had always been the more outgoing of the two, while Jacqueline was quieter, more reserved. Yet the sisters were close, sharing everything from their dreams to their secrets. That night, they made plans to visit the Ayala Center, a popular mall, for a casual evening of shopping and dinner. Around 8 p.m., they were seen at the mall's food court. Eyewitnesses would later recall seeing the two chatting, laughing, seemingly unaware of the danger that would soon unfold. Around 9 p.m., Jacqueline called her mother, Thelma Chiong, to say they were heading to another location, but that was the last communication anyone had with them. Hours passed, and when the sisters didn't return home, their parents began to panic. Calls to their phones went unanswered. The next morning, they were still missing. The urgency of the situation quickly escalated. The Chiong family, well known in Cebu's business and religious circles, immediately reached out to the police, the community, and the media. Flyers were printed, billboards were posted, and news outlets aired bulletins about the disappearance of the two young women. By the following day, hope turned to horror. On July 18, 1997, a body was discovered in a ravine in Karkar, a town south of Cebu. The body was badly decomposed, but forensic experts quickly identified it as Marijoy. The Chiong family was devastated, but Jacqueline's whereabouts remained unknown. The mystery surrounding her disappearance and the gruesome discovery of Marijoy's body set the stage for a nationwide investigation. The police, media, and public alike became obsessed with solving the case, but the real questions were just beginning to emerge. Who was responsible for this? Was it a random act of violence, or was there a deeper, more sinister plot at play? Chapter 2. A prominent name, a shocking accusation. The arrest that would change the course of the investigation came on August 1997. Francisco Juan Paco Larrañaga, a 19-year-old student at the Center for Culinary Arts in Manila, became one of the key suspects. Paco, whose family had deep ties to the Spanish-Filipino elite, was not the typical suspect in a crime of this nature. He had been studying in Manila at the time of the Chiong sisters' disappearance, far from Cebu, which raised questions about how he could have been involved. Yet, despite a seemingly ironclad alibi, Paco's name became synonymous with the brutal crime. Paco's family, one of the most prominent in the Philippines, was well connected. His relatives included businessmen, politicians, and socialites, people with influence. Was he guilty because of his family's stature? Or was it possible that he had been falsely implicated? The accusations against Paco were chilling. According to the prosecution, Paco and 6 others, Alberto Cano, Ariel Balansag, James Andrew Uy, Rowan Adelon, and the Cano brothers, Jasmine and James Anthony, had abducted Marijoy and Jacqueline outside the Ayala Mall. They claimed that the girls were then subjected to horrific abuse in a secluded house before being transported to a cliff where Marijoy was murdered and Jacqueline's fate remained unclear. The evidence against Paco, however, was questionable. At the time of the crime, he was not in Cebu, as multiple witnesses testified. Photos, flight records, and even his classmates and professors from Manila all provided solid alibis, confirming that Paco had been in Manila attending school and socializing with friends. Yet, despite these concrete alibis, the prosecution pressed on with their case. The trial became a spectacle. Public sentiment turned sharply against the accused, and media coverage intensified. Paco, despite his alibi, was painted as the quintessential spoiled rich kid, someone who had the means and connections to get away with anything. The fact that he was from an influential family only fueled suspicions. But amidst the frenzy of media coverage, the legal question loomed large. Was the case built on actual evidence or merely public opinion? Chapter 3. Trial by Public Opinion. The trial of Paco Larrañaga and his co-accused became a national sensation. News outlets covered every twist and turn, reporting not just on the facts, but on the personalities involved. Paco, with his well-groomed appearance, was portrayed as a privileged youth who, despite his apparent innocence, was somehow guilty by association with his family. The prosecution's star witness, Davidson Valente Ruzia, a self-confessed criminal, claimed he had been with the group that abducted and tortured the Chiong sisters. Ruzia's testimony, however, was riddled with inconsistencies and contradictions. Ruzia initially claimed that the abduction took place around 10 p.m., but records and witness testimony placed Paco in Manila at the time. Despite these discrepancies, Ruzia's account was taken as gospel by the prosecution. The lack of physical evidence, no DNA, no fingerprints, and no weapon linking Paco or the others to the crime scene didn't seem to matter. What mattered more was the narrative that had been spun, and that was enough to fuel the fire of public outrage. The defense mounted a vigorous challenge to the allegations. They presented photographic evidence, flight tickets, and multiple alibis. In the age of information, Paco's supporters thought they had an airtight case. But despite presenting these pieces of evidence, the defense was stymied at every turn. The judge ruled that documents and records could be forged or fabricated, and crucial witnesses who could have testified in Paco's favor were not allowed to present their testimony. The trial lasted for several years, but the verdict was inevitable. In 1999, all 7 defendants were convicted of kidnapping, rape, and murder. The sentence: death by lethal injection. However, even as the gavel came down, cracks in the justice system began to show. Was this really a case of justice being served, or was it a product of media sensationalism and a rush to judgment? Chapter 4. Flawed Justice, Global Outrage. The conviction of Paco Larrañaga and his co-defendants set off a wave of outrage, not just in the Philippines, but internationally. Human rights organizations, foreign diplomats, and legal experts began to question the fairness of the trial. The case quickly became a cause célèbre, with some arguing that Paco had been wrongfully convicted due to the public's perception of his wealth and status. One of the most vocal critics was Amnesty International, which highlighted several troubling aspects of the case. The primary issue was the lack of forensic evidence linking Paco to the crime scene. There was no DNA, no trace of his involvement at the site of Mary Joy's murder. Furthermore, the key witness, Davidson Ruzia, had a criminal record and a motive to lie. Yet, his testimony was enough to secure conviction. In 2006, a significant legal shift occurred. Philippine President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo abolished the death penalty, citing human rights concerns. Paco's sentence was commuted to life imprisonment, a victory of sorts for his family and supporters. But while the international community celebrated, many in the Philippines remained convinced of the guilt of Paco and the others. The case was far from over. Chapter 5. Deported to a foreign prison. In 2009, Paco was transferred from a Philippine prison to a facility in Spain, where he could serve his sentence in a more familiar environment close to his maternal relatives. The transfer, negotiated between the governments of the Philippines and Spain, sparked new controversy. To the Chiong family, this move felt like an injustice. They saw it as a betrayal. Paco was being allowed to live in relative comfort, far away from the pain and suffering his victims had endured. Meanwhile, they were still left with questions about their daughter's fates, and they believed Paco's escape to Spain was part of a bigger conspiracy to shield him from true justice. But for many of Paco's supporters, the transfer was a step toward fairness. They saw it as a small victory in the ongoing battle for his innocence. As Paco settled into prison life in Spain, he became more involved in prison reform activities. He earned a reputation as a model prisoner, taking part in cooking classes and even working on community projects within the prison system. The Chiong family, however, was not ready to let go of their fight. Their battle for justice was far from over, and the case continued to haunt them. After all, they had yet to find Jacqueline's body or receive any closure. In their eyes, Paco's comfortable life in Spain was a slap in the face. Chapter 6. Jacqueline's absence, the family's pain. The absence of Jacqueline's body loomed large over the case. Mary Joy's body had been discovered, but Jacqueline's fate remained a mystery. For years, the Chiong family's grief was compounded by the pain of not knowing what happened to their daughter. The lack of closure made the entire situation more unbearable. The Chiongs maintained that justice had been served with the conviction of Paco and his co-accused. But the lingering questions about the case, particularly the disappearance of Jacqueline, left them feeling incomplete. Had they truly found the right men? Or had the system failed them? The documentary Give Up Tomorrow reignited public interest in the case, but it also stirred deep emotions. For some, it was a chance to re-examine the evidence and question the fairness of the trial. For others, it was seen as a one-sided attack on the judicial process and the Chiong family's grief. The film only deepened the divide between those who believed in Paco's innocence and those who still saw him as guilty. Chapter 7. The documentary that reignited the fire. In 2018, the documentary Give Up Tomorrow brought the Chiong case back into the public spotlight. It told the story of Paco's conviction and the flaws in the judicial system that led to his sentence. The film focused on the lack of forensic evidence, the questionable witness testimony, and the overwhelming media pressure that shaped public opinion. For many international viewers, the documentary painted a picture of a young man wrongfully convicted. It sparked debates about the fairness of the Philippine justice system, the death penalty, and the role of media in shaping legal outcomes. However, to those who believed Paco was guilty, the documentary felt like a biased portrayal that ignored the pain and suffering of the Chiong family. More than 2 decades after the events of 1997, the questions surrounding the case remain unanswered. Was Paco truly innocent? Did the justice system fail both the Chiong family and the accused? And most haunting of all, where is Jacqueline? That's all for tonight's story. Another thread in the web of true crime, quietly unraveling as the night goes on. If you're still with me, thanks for listening. And if sleep has already taken you, may your dreams be peaceful and your mind at ease. I'll be here next time by the fire with another story waiting to be told. Good night, and don't forget to lock your doors.